I've been looking at fashion plates from the 1790s and 1810s, and I want to show you something about the empire waist that I found really interesting about Regency fashion. Before the 1790s, the fashionable silhouette was an hourglass. The waist was cinched in by corsets, creating a dramatic shape: tiny waist, full bust, full hips. It required serious engineering. Every part of the female form was controlled and shaped by the corset underneath. Then something shifted. By the late 1790s, a new style emerged. The waistline moved up right under the bust. The dress fell straight down from there, loose and flowing, often in white muslin or simple fabrics. It was a columnar silhouette inspired by ancient Greek and Roman statues. This wasn't just a new look. It was a fundamental change in how women's bodies were supposed to be dressed. You might ask yourself, what drove this change? Part of it was intellectual. The discovery of Pompeii in 1748 had sparked Europe's obsession with the ancient world. By the 1790s, classicism had seeped into everything: architecture, interior design, art, and fashion. People studied Greek vases and Roman sculptures to understand how ancient people dressed, and they tried to recreate those styles. Looking at Greek and Roman art, designers noticed something. Women in classical times wore simple rectangular tunics. The clothes were draped loosely, belted high under the bust or at the natural waist. They weren't corseted, they weren't engineered. They looked natural and comfortable. The Regency designers interpreted this to mean that classical dress was how women were meant to dress: simple, loose, without extreme corsetry. And so the empire waist was born as a revival of this imagined classical ideal. But there was something else driving this change: comfort. The previous fashion required constant, rigorous corseting. A woman's waist had to be perpetually cinched. The corsets were stiff, restrictive, and uncomfortable. The empire waist offered something different. It required less extreme corseting. Some women could wear very light stays. Some wore nothing at all under their empire waist dresses, just a chemise. For the first time in decades, women's clothing could be relatively loose and comfortable. This was genuinely liberating, especially for women with different body shapes. If you didn't have an hourglass figure naturally, the previous fashion made you feel inadequate. You'd spend all day trying to force your body into an impossible shape. The empire waist didn't care about that. It was a column. Anyone could wear it. A curvy woman could wear it. A thin woman could wear it. An asymmetrical body could wear it. The loose draping was forgiving. There was another practical benefit that deserves mention. The empire waist accommodated pregnancy naturally. Before the empire waist, pregnant women faced a real problem. The fashionable silhouette required a defined, cinched waist. As a woman's belly grew, she couldn't achieve that silhouette in the usual way. So pregnant women either had to wear modified dresses or step outside of fashion entirely. With the empire waist, a pregnant woman could wear the exact same fashionable dress as everyone else. The high waistline and loose skirt accommodated a growing belly without any modifications. She could wear the same dresses before, during, and after pregnancy. Now, even though the empire waist was simpler than the previous corset-heavy style, it wasn't actually easy to achieve or maintain. The classical look required a very high bust position. The dress had to create a long, vertical line from armpit to floor. To achieve this, women still wore stays underneath. They were just different. Regency stays were lighter, shorter, and less constrictive than corsets, but they still provided lift and support. The fabrics mattered too. The most fashionable empire waist dresses were made of fine muslin, lightweight, often sheer white muslin. This was expensive and imported from India. It required careful maintenance. You couldn't just throw a muslin dress in a trunk, it would wrinkle and stain. The style also required a very specific body presentation. The emphasis was on the bust, which was lifted high. The torso below the bust was meant to be a long, straight column. This favored tall women with high busts. A woman with a short torso or low bust would look awkward in the style. So even though the empire waist seemed simpler and more natural, it still communicated status, wealth, and social position. Wearing expensive white muslin announced that you had money. Having the body shape that suited the style announced something about your natural advantages. Being able to maintain the style announced that you had the leisure time and resources to care for delicate fabrics. What's interesting is that the empire waist actually de-emphasized curves. The previous fashion, the hourglass, celebrated curves. It showed off a woman's bust, waist, and hips as distinct, separate features. The empire waist flattened all of that. It created a vertical line. It downplayed the waist. It even downplayed hip curves because the skirt just hung straight down. This was a genuinely different aesthetic. It wasn't about looking sexy or curvy. It was about looking classical, elegant, and refined. It was about imitating the idealized forms of ancient statues. Calm, composed, and draped. Women's bodies weren't the enemy of fashion anymore in the same way. The fashion wasn't trying to force bodies into an extreme shape. It was trying to achieve a particular silhouette, and women of different shapes could wear it and look acceptable. When you look at a Regency portrait, what you're seeing is a woman in fashionable empire waist dress. But what she's communicating through that dress is complex. She's announcing, I'm familiar with classical aesthetics. I have access to fine fabrics. I can afford to care for delicate muslin. I understand what's fashionable in a new post-revolution world. Fashion in the Regency was always communicating. Every choice about what to wear was a statement. The empire waist was a statement about taste, education, and social position, just like the hourglass had been before it. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy exploring Austen's world and the Regency way, subscribe and join me for the next adventure.